Alrighty, yo, what is going on, everybody? It's your boy, Mr. DDG94, back with another reaction video. Today, we finna react to Remember Recess. Of course, I remember Recess. Who don't remember Recess? Ding, 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 tick, 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 ding, tick, 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 tick. Most definitely.
Remember recess? No, I'm not talking about the second best thing about school right behind Pizza Day in the cafeteria. Instead, we are talking about the show, Recess. And honestly, maybe I don't need to make this a wait remember, since I've been asked so many times over the years to cover the show, but regardless, here we are. Recess was one of those Disney cartoons from the late 90s and early 2000s era that for some reason really just sticks with you. I don't know if it's the name of the show, the way the characters are designed, or even in having a relation to nostalgic memories of school, but whatever it is, Recess always just kind of stuck around, loitering in the space of my memory banks. Recess as a show wanted to replicate this feeling of freedom that gives you what feels like a break from the world around you. When you are in school for the first chunk of your life, the halls you walk down become the roads that connect all of the rooms we spend our days in, where you don't have any true feeling of control until you get this little bit of a break nestled into your day where you can go outside, hang out with your friends, and not have to worry about what assignment or homework you may have for math class. On top of this, Recess as a show incorporates a deeper look into society as a whole and applies these elements to stories that involve these groups of kids who go to 3rd Street Elementary School. Today, let's take a look at what can be regarded as a Disney cartoon classic. Oh, perfect. There's the bell. It's time for Recess. I'm gonna be real with you all right now. This is something you may not know about me, but Hey Arnold is my favorite show of all time. Oh, you did know that. Did the 7.5-hour video that I made give that away? Well, either way, I just want to set a baseline that states my enjoyment of slice of life entertainment, and my GOAT for this is Hey Arnold. The way it handles characters, personal stories, moments that make me see the people around me represented on screen, and so much more. Recess is another show that can easily sit up there with something like Hey Arnold for me, as it follows a lot of the same beats in how it handles bringing each of the kids to life and explores the stories it wants to tell. For the most part, it's a grounded show that takes reality for what it is and gives it to you from the perspective of a kid. By that, I mean you get what feels like your average everyday way of life, but there are sometimes moments that warp reality a bit. It's not just in the moments where something unrealistic happens that can be explained by childlike wonder and imagination, but in the way your mind would exaggerate and envision certain things based on how you see them or feel about them. A lot of kids may look at school as this prison-like place that you are forced to go to, filled with teachers who may be strict and lunches that may be slop, and in the show, the school is shown to have this prison type of look. From the way it looks from the outside, to the recess area behind it, making it feel like the kids, despite getting this freedom for a brief moment in their day, are still reminded just how stuck in school they truly are. So it's a mix of how things actually are and aren't. It's just how you at that age could see it. You have this duality where when the kids are outside, you get this sense of freedom. You can see the sky, you can play on the playground, you can hang out with your friends without the teacher telling you to be quiet. But these brighter moments are gone when we see inside of the school. Its bland and depressing color palette sets a loud tone of the kids not being in an inviting environment to learn, which in turn can make it feel a lot more awful than it may actually be. I like when a piece of media can portray certain parts of life through the eyes of how a kid may interpret the world around them, allowing for a chance to express these feelings so that the viewer can find some sort of relation to connect it with. Then through this, being able to break down society as a whole through the series, which is something that Recess does quite well.
Recess will be right back. Now, back to Recess!
Recess follows mainly one group of friends in the 4th grade as they deal with all that school has to offer, more specifically, during their time of freedom in the day, that being recess. Making sure that this time is truly theirs and not solely under the rule of those in charge who hold some sort of authority over them, like school faculty or Randall. Nobody likes a snitch. Randall is the definition of snitches get stitches. Our main group of kids we follow
Fuck
are
Randall.
Vince, Spinelli, Mikey, TJ, Gretchen, and Gus. Recess, a nice mixed and matched friend group filled with different personalities. TJ is our main vessel into the series, as he is usually the one to kind of lead his friends around, or be the one in charge of the shenanigans they get into. As a character, TJ is probably the most relatable out there as the everyman. He's not the smartest person out there who takes school super seriously, he's not the most athletic, but he is creative when it comes to things that do interest him. From finding ways to get back at teachers to having this aura about him that allows his friends and others to gravitate towards him, especially as he stands up for the students and their rights to not be treated so awful in school in various ways. He has the gift of gab, but his confidence sells his passion when it comes to sticking up for others in the ways that he does throughout the series. Then there's Spinelli, the rough and tough one of the group who doesn't have time for nonsense, putting on her tougher image in most situations as it becomes a shield for her and who she is. She doesn't want to come off as ever needing help or that there is something that could ever get to her to hurt her feelings, but she does have a softer side. She has interests in things that you wouldn't expect based on how she presents herself, but this is all mostly hidden away or brushed aside if it's ever brought up. And I think throughout the series, the stuff that we do see about her really makes her the most interesting character of all to follow. There's Vince, who is the athletic one of the group, leading him to be pretty dang good at just about any challenge that comes his way, with a lot of his drive stemming from the competitive aspect of things. So it doesn't necessarily have to be a sport, but if it's competitive, his drive to win is there. He's a cool character for the fact that he does fit the mold of how a jock in media would be crafted out to be, but this doesn't turn him into a character that is mean or has a certain popularity status that gives him a superiority complex, as at the end of the day, he's there for his friends and has a good moral compass. Mikey is the larger friend of the group that plays into the gentle giant stereotype, where despite what initial impressions some may have of him, he's overall just a nice guy who enjoys what he enjoys. This all stems from him finding and having his own inner peace in doing what he likes, even if some others would judge him for it, with stuff like singing, ballet, and poetry. He's a character that likes what he likes and cares about his friends greatly, and for how this group sticks together at the end of the day, I think Mikey has a lot to thank for that. There's Gretchen, the smartest character in the group, but I love that her character is not just this smarty pants type of character who is way too smart and you can't get anything past her, as she easily can believe or take things at face value when told to her. It's nice that she gets to be super into her studies, do well in school, and know so much about stuff in the field of science, while then having a bit of separation from that world thanks to this being her friend group. Rather than being surrounded by others like herself, there is this other side of her that just likes being a kid and wants to hang out with her friends without it having to always be about learning. And last but not least is Gus, who enters into the friend group as a new kid, much like Squid or Sam did in Rocket Power. He becomes a vessel to understand how things work and operate in the world of the show, or the world of the school in the show early on, giving the viewer a chance to be Gus as he learns things just like you would, since this is basically happening right near the start of the series. He's an interesting character in the fact that he represents a few different viewpoints. He's the new kid a lot thanks to his military family, so being shy and reserved is how he presents himself, and along with his clothes and haircut, you can see the military strictness that he has to live by thanks to his upbringing. Sometimes you get to see more about this in the ways in how he handles certain situations, being able to stand up for himself when necessary, taking charge when the occasion arises, and being a cold-blooded killer when it comes to dodgeball. You don't want to mess with El Diablo. In general, this group of friends is a pretty mixed bag, as they all are a good bit different from one another, but I like how that is portrayed in the sense of these being kids in an elementary school. While there are cliques and certain cutoff groups that have their own specific vibes, like the nerdy kids, or the popular preppy kids, or the goths, a lot of these true separations happen the older you get, and these are just a group of kids with different backgrounds, interests, goals, and hobbies that have all come together as friends while under the umbrella of dealing with school life. It plays into the tropes of youth empowerment over authority figures and establishments, as the show would revolve around seeing life at school itself having some sort of issue that comes up that puts the kids in a position then to take charge against it. This also gives the show a lot of breathing room when it comes to the stories they are telling that relate further to how the world works, seeing allegories or representation of the things that plague adults, and I find it incredible in how the show is able to explore these themes in such a way that makes sense for both the context of the show and what it's portraying in real life. This was created by Paul Germain and Joe Ansalabaher, a duo who we talked about before, as they would also go on to create Lloyd in Space, another fun show I made a video on a while back, so check that one out later if you want. But these two came together after working with one another on the Rugrats, and in a lot of ways, Recess has elements of what made the Rugrats special, with that being able to view the world from the perspective of a kid at a specific age, or for the Rugrats, a baby, I guess. If Rugrats was a show about looking up at the world and seeing the world from the ground, Recess is a show about being 9 years old and out there with bigger and little people. How do you navigate it? The answer is with the help from your friends. That quote comes directly from Paul and Joe in an interview with Entertainment Weekly. They would build Recess with the base of their own experiences in school, feelings that they felt, people that they knew, teachers that they had, and fuse these stories with the likes of oppression, social status in society, and turning the landscape of school into a prison-like environment. When all said and done, the final product performed very well.
Recess will be right back.
Recess is back in session. Well,
Recess officially premiered on September 13th, 1997 on ABC's Disney's One Saturday Morning programming block after 2 weeks earlier getting a special sneak peek release on ABC. The series lasted the average limited amount of 65 episodes spread across 6 seasons in total, but more episodes had split segments, so there were plenty of stories that were able to be told. During its run, Recess was a solid hit with viewers, and thus led it to having a good secondary life airing reruns across Disney's other channels, and spawning not 1, not 2, not 3, but 4 movies, with one of them being theatrical, Recess School's Out, getting a chance to be in theaters in early 2001 before the series itself ended by the end of the year. And hey, $44.5 million earned on a budget of $23 million? That's not too bad. The movie was a bit of a challenge to create. Having to come up with something that would fit on the big screen and can still be faithful to what the show is wasn't easy, based on how the show itself being about these smaller instances that can be made larger, but still had their limitations. Paul and Joe took on the challenge anyway and came up with a way to blend in some new ideas, a different spin on understanding authority figures, but still keeping what made Recess special in the process. After this, and well, the end of the series in general, 3 more direct-to-video movies were released: Recess Christmas, Miracle on 3rd Street, Recess All Growed Down, and Recess Taking the 5th Grade. The latter ends up being the canon end to the series as a whole that takes place after the School's Out movie. But even still, this wasn't the last we'd see of them, as years later they would all cross over into an episode of Lilo and Stitch the series, as their class would be on a school vacation to Hawaii. I think my school took us to a museum once. That's cool, I guess. I think that the show does a great job at building up who all the characters were, and not just our main cast of 6 here, but all of the supporting characters as well, both students and teachers. For the teachers, it's nice to see that it's not always just this portrayal of them being mean or awful. Sure, you get Miss Finster, who helps monitor all of the kids when they aren't in class, and she comes off as strict and scary in the kids' main opposition, but then there is also their main teacher, who is kind, and all the students pretty much like her. Now, there are plenty of instances with characters like Miss Finster, where we get to see a perspective that doesn't show her coming off as just being evil or cruel for the sake of it, having little moments that show the reality that the kids don't always see, and that's her care of the students. I genuinely love this aspect with how these subtle moments are sprinkled throughout the show, while the main perspective shows her in a negative light. The principal of the school, Mr. Prickly, can in many instances live up to the first 5 letters of his last name, but at the end of the day, he's just a strict principal. He's not truly evil, he's just the guy who runs the place and will enforce the rules when necessary, but still cares about all of the students. The extended cast of students also offer a lot to the series as well, like Randall, yeah, this guy again. He's basically the school snitch, as he is Miss Finster's assistant in keeping law and order over the kids. Like, oh no, tell on me, Randall, use your Blue's Clues notebook and say that, oh no, I did too much hopscotch. Yeah, he's the first to snitch on anyone if they're doing anything remotely wrong. Look, everyone dislikes him as a character. I'm talking about, like, as a viewer, we dislike him, and we all knew someone who was like this growing up, and I think that's why. There's King Bob. He's in the 6th grade and he's the king of the playground and has both good and bad qualities, but the power of being king definitely can get to him, and this explores the class systems at play in the storytelling and world building. As far as any students who could be seen as the bad guy of the series, there is Erwin, a 5th grader who skews into the bully jock territory, making him a quick antagonist to Vince, but he really is the main enemy to the whole group, and kind of mainly focuses on TJ though. But even in saying that, even he has his moments to shine and being shown as not an awful person. Again, I like that we get to see the complexities of the characters, both in small moments or in larger impactful ones. Much like the Rugrats or Hey Arnold, Recess blends in just the right amount of the fantastical, playing around with fun, ridiculous moments, but nothing that ever pushes it so far out of the realm of possibility that it takes away from what the show itself is. Unless we are talking about the plot of the School's Out movie where this guy is trying to make it so summer doesn't exist and causing an ice age to happen. That was pretty wild, I guess. Paul and Joe loved what they created with Recess. If we look back to that Entertainment Weekly interview when asked about what they are proudest of having accomplished with the show, they said, "The thing I'm proudest about has to do with what we talked about initially. We really felt like we captured an aspect of childhood and talked to our audience about their own experiences. That's what we wanted to do, and I felt we really achieved it there." I totally agree. That is the thing I'm probably proudest of too. Another thing that came up recently for me is that you look back at your work of the past and you think, well, I could have done that better. I could have done this better. Recently, Paul and I were at a museum and we showed an episode of Recess. Both of us were like, that really came out great. It feels like cinema, the way cinema speaks to you. We're proud that Recess spoke to our audience the same way.
Recess will be right back. Now, back to Recess.
It's a timeless show. It can still be related to now just as it was back when it originally premiered. You could just play reruns of the series and an audience today can take away the same great stuff, but what about if there was just more of it? Is there a place on TV or streaming today for a reboot or continuation of Recess? Well, the answer is possibly yes.
No, please do not reboot this show. Disney, leave it alone. Don't even think about it. Don't make no live action adaptation and don't try to reboot this. Just leave it how it is, bro. We good with it how it is, bro. Just leave the classics alone.
Once more, back in that interview with Entertainment Weekly, Paul and Joe, when asked about how it could adapt to more modern-day situations, said, "Yes, and I'll tell you why. Even then, we would have to figure out ways of talking about the aspects that are classic and timeless and not about the technology. We would probably address it, maybe even make fun of it. We even did that at the time on the series. We did an episode with these trading card games where the kids would turn into zombies because they got too into the game. Gretchen has basically a cell phone. Yeah, we made fun of early cell phones. Stuff like that. Also, because if you go look at a playground now, it's still the same. No teacher lets you take your iPhone out on the playground. It's still a universal place. It's still what it was. The rest of the world changes, but Recess never does. You go to an elementary school playground at Recess, and they're still bopping one of those tetherballs around. They're still playing dodgeball. They're still running around. There's still clicks. What makes the click? It might be slightly different, but not really. We've had a lot of ideas about it. You'd either do it with another group of kids and it's today, but it's Recess still, or you could go back as if it's the next day if you wanted. I just feel like there's no way that idea is dated. That's why we did it that way. That's why we tried to find it universal. Recently, a pitch bible for what would be a reboot/continuation of Recess leaked online titled Recess Next Bell, and it featured some images that show it's the same world as the show before, but now the main characters from that show are adults, and that there will be a focus on a new group of kids as well. Plus, there's a Better Call Saul reference, and that's pretty great. Some interesting information on this is that it has both Paul and Joe listed as working on this, and gives some insight as to at least the pitch bible itself being put together in the summer of 2022. In fact, there is a quote from Joe that's from 2022 when interviewed by Slash Film, where he said, "We've come up with several different angles, and we've tried different things. It's been 4 years that we've been working on it, but that's an example of how things have changed. Things are slower." There's tons of details within the pitch bible to learn what this show could have been about or could be about, so if you want to look into it more, feel free to do so, but as of now, this is not a greenlit production, as no further word has come out about it as of the making of this video. As far as the show itself, I think Recess is a great example of a show that gives you a lot of relatability, both in seeing these situations in the ways that the kids do, as well as from the perspective of an adult to see the connective tissue to a more adult or real-world aspect. The characters in Recess are extremely well written and feel like actual kids that you knew growing up. There was rarely any instances of characters coming off as one-dimensional, allowing them to be fleshed out and explored further when they don't come across that way, giving deeper backstories or personal details, interests, or hobbies that can go as far as to ebb and flow how you feel about a certain character. One episode you can hate how Randall is, but then another feels sad for him or even cheer him on. This is something that can happen for a good portion of the supporting cast. I appreciate the level of detail that went into making these characters feel a lot more real and believable. As far as what future this series might or might not have, I do think in context of the series that it could work today if it were to be brought back. There's too many universal connections that make it evergreen. But I do, however, fear that if the reboot were to happen where there would be a split focus on the adults, adults, and how their lives beyond school can come with their own feelings of work, for example, being a prison, and their freedom or recess is now their limited free time, then I feel it's splitting away from the school recess and kids aspect too heavily and loses a bit of what the show could do in having a sense of relatability with its kid audience. But what do you think? If they do end up making a reboot of Recess, how would you like to see it play out? Or would you not want to see it happen at all? Let me know in the comments below along with your thoughts in
Leave the classics alone.
general about Recess. Well, there's the bell again. I guess recess is over and it's time to go. Thank you so much for watching. Make sure to hit the like button.
Alrighty, man. That's just gonna about do it for this one, man. Hey, man, leave the classics alone, man. Recess is a classic, bro. It's goated. I don't think it should be messed with. Like he said, it relates to the kids and us that used to go outside for recess, man. The adventures, the wackiness of just being outside for recess, bro. Just moments, bro. For sure. But anyway, so that's just gonna about do it for this one. I will see you all in the next video. Peace out.